Nationals were over in 1969, and racquetball then hits a period where it starts to grow. Did that happen immediately or within a few years?
By 1972, the growth was in full swing. And you can tell that when there comes to be racket companies and ball companies. And they're going, wait a second, if we can get a I remember, because I used to work with Leach Industries, and the head of the sales department was a gentleman by the name of Charlie Drake. And we would be, on occasion, calling areas that didn't even have a court. And telling them there'll be one there soon, buy these rackets, you know, that type of thing. But it was going fast. It was going fast. And the first commercial racquetball club was Mel Gorham Sports Center in Pacific Beach here in San Diego. And they started growing all over the country. I mean, in 6 years, there were hundreds and hundreds of clubs throughout the country.
Okay, so the sport starts to grow. I'm thinking about that time in January of '73. I played my first tournament in the States. I'd played in the military. And you had a choice of what division you were going to play in. You could play in Men's Open or you could play in Men's Open.
Well,
early 50
on,
and
I don't know whether it was just in San Diego, because when you had two or three players as accomplished as Muehlheisen and I were, no one else was going to enter the tournament if they had to face off against people that were hitting 1,000 shots a day, and they were just playing recreationally. So we started doing, by 1970, we were clearly having tournaments with skill levels. The age distinction didn't get addressed immediately, but the skill levels did, and we were considered...
that early in San Diego, skill levels?
Yes, we were. I was considered an A player, and it went down from there. That's the interesting part now. They have pros, opens, double A, you know, and the whole gamut of these
Everybody's a champion.
Yeah, they have these little segments, but hey, I'll tell you one thing, a B player then was a heck of a player.
Yeah.
You could really play if you were a B player.
On a personal note, I competed 2 years without ever winning a match because where I was, there was only open. You had no choice.
Well, that's the way it was in paddleball. When I first went to the paddleball tournament, there was only one draw. And I don't remember, there must have been age divisions in the '69, but I don't remember them. I just remember the doubles and the singles open.
Okay, so we haven't mentioned anything about Michigan, the summer in Michigan. Again, in the biography, Steve Keeley mentions, in fact, a lot of my knowledge comes from secondhand from reading that biography. And so the summer in Michigan, the Z-balls invented, ceiling balls invented.
I was in law school. I had finished my first year of law school in around June of '71, and I had lost the first two nationals. Now, and keep in mind, in those days, there was 2 tournaments a year, so you dearly did not want to lose the nationals. And I had lost to Muehlheisen in '69 under circumstances that I'm not going to discuss here, but I was very unhappy because I had won the first game against him in the finals and was winning 20-14 in the second and ended up losing the match. The next year, I was playing a gentleman by the name of Craig Finger from Michigan, who was a tennis player type person and a friend of Paul Lawrence, the guy that I'd beaten in paddleball originally. I played him in the finals and lost under embarrassing circumstances, and I was tired of that. So I wanted to get out and start working on my game. Oh, the third embarrassment was losing to Garfinkel, your friend, in the '71 Nationals in Utah. So I had had my fill of losing when I was the best player in the country. Everybody knew it, except the results didn't bear it out. So I made the decision to pick the best athlete I could find who is physically able to play 4 or 5 hours a day against me and to go to him. That was Steve Keeley. He was in Michigan. He was the reigning paddleball champion, very rugged, very athletic, did not tire. I want to emphasize that. He did not tire. So I went from San Diego to Michigan and lived with him in East Lansing. And we played a match every single day during the entire summer. And when I say a match, I mean a full-blown tournament caliber, no socials, no hinders. It was a match. And I played him every day. And when we came back after that, when he came to the first singles invitationals in racquetball in San Diego, he and I were the 2 best players in the country, by far.
Now, the ceiling ball was invented that summer or perfected?
It's not a fair statement to say it was invented. The handball players, particularly the reigning national champion Paul Haber, had used the ceiling ball as a significant component in their sword and shield method of playing for years. The racquetball players who had played handball.
Can I stop you right there?
Sure.
For not everybody may understand sword and shield.
The predominant method of playing handball was to use the stronger hand as an offensive weapon and the offhand as a defensive weapon. So you didn't get in trouble with your left hand. You moved the fellow around until you could get a right hand on the ball. That's what I mean by the sword and the shield.
Right.
To this day, most people have a stronger stroke.
So the forehand would be your sword and the backhand would be your shield.
That was what it was with me. Now, Keeley was equally as adept with his backhand, if not more so than his forehand.
Right.
And so he, I don't know if I would say he looked down on the sword and shield, but he is, for years, and I'm talking about 40 years, commented each year about what a pathetic backhand I had. And I would say to him, I go, Keeley, you've hit a lot of balls over there and you ain't won many times. So there's got to be a reason for that. And he believes it's because that I used it as a shield and my shot selection was excellent. Right. But that's what I did during that summer, and I worked at it. I hit 1,000 shots a day. In this case, I was hitting the ceiling ball. And I learned to hit that ceiling ball, and the main thing I learned was how to hit it and keep hitting it until the other person lost their will to continue to go to the ceiling or made an error. So it's the patience of hitting it over and over. None of the pros today do that because the ball comes off the back wall. Right. And once it comes off the back wall, there ain't no patience exhibited. Someone's hitting a photon.
Right.
But in those days, the circumstances of the equipment and the ball left that ball directly in the back crack where no one could attack it. So it was a great strategy for the equipment.
Right. So that summer, okay, now the Z-ball. Now,
I did invent the Z-ball.
You did?
Yes, I did.
It's on record. You invented the Z-ball.
I invented the Z-ball, and I invented it that summer, and I utilized it for the first time in tournament play against Ron Rubenstein, who was a super player out of Chicago.
Out of Chicago, right.
I used it against him in the finals of the Nationals in Memphis, at what then was called the Memphis State University. And they had a glass court and everything, and I hit that Z-ball. I thought the guy was going to die. He was the first person I ever saw call a timeout, and then couldn't continue after the timeout, so he called a second timeout. I love that.
It swept the country. I remember hearing about the Z-ball, and everybody had to try it, and none of us could figure out what that wasn't an easy shot to hit with a slow ball.
No,
right?
It took some time, but once you learned to get the angle on it and it hit near that back wall and rolled right along it, it was a frustrating weapon. Now, it went out of vogue, and very few people use it now. I'm not sure about the modern pros, whether they're using that from the front court. It's hard to hit unless you're in the front court.
Right. It's actually used once in a while,
Is it?
but not. But again, I think underused. I think it's a great shot from the front court.
Some of the
At every
paddleball
level.
players are using it, and they have to be very powerful to be able to make the ball go all the way
With a
around.
paddle, they're hitting
Yes.
a Z-ball. Wow. Okay, so let's go to racquetball's booming. Now we're in the 70s. You're on ABC TV, Wild World of Sports. Did you make that?
We had a number of marquee appearances, more so than the modern pros are allowed these days, because it was at a phase where there was this huge enthusiasm for the sport. It was growing faster than perhaps any other sport has ever grown. Everybody was talking racquetball. All of the people in television and in sports were playing racquetball. And the court systems were stuff, money was pouring in from the rackets, the balls. Adidas was in with the clothing. They were competing for shoe endorsements. I mean, it was
Nike was in.
it was a big deal. Wilson Sporting Goods, Voigt, all of these people were vying for their share of what they expected to be an ever-growing pie. And that was what I generally consider to be the prime years of racquetball. And of course, the debate of why that did not continue, I have my own theories on that.
Well,
And would you like to hear them?
Definitely.
I think from a player's standpoint, what made early racquetball so appealing was the ball and the rackets were situated to where you had some time to run, think, and hit. And you could actually make decisions as to where you were striking the ball. And an average athlete could move his opponent, and you could get a great aerobic workout in an hour. As the racket sped up, the pros can do it, but the lower grade bulk of the bell-shaped curve cannot play a coherent game. All they can do is watch the bullet go to one side or another and scramble around and hit the ball if they can at all. That to me was I thought it was and I was preaching this in '75 as the ball was speeding up. I said, this ball is getting too fast, it's destroying the rally, it's destroying the balance between offense and defense. Now, what the power structure interpreted that to mean is that it was bad for Charlie's game. It was bad for my game. I don't want to discount that. But the true reason I was stating it was because I believed it was bad for the sport in the long run. Now, also, at the same time when Carter was in office, all these racquetball courts, these hundreds and hundreds of facilities that went up in the United States and Canada during that time period, many of them were tied to prime. And they had been built with two purposes in mind, so that lenders wouldn't lend just on a single-use building. And when that prime went up to 19 or whatever it went up to...
Tied to prime, you mean prime interest rate.
Prime interest rate. When those courts were under that kind of economic pressure where their bill just went up 5 times to pay for their mortgage, they had no choice.
They had to convert them to office buildings.
They either had to convert them into athletic facilities with use the rooms for where they can put 15
Right.
people in the room, but it stopped the building process. It reduced the number of courts, and the excitement came out of the balloon.
Right.
Is basically what happened at that time, and that was in '81 or '82.
Right.
Now, I don't want to saddle the sport with that one conclusion, so I'm eager to be proved wrong. But I'm telling you that if you don't have a balance between offense and defense in your sport, so that there's a coherent rally that results in a workout, you're not going to have people playing racquetball. To me, it's too plain to ignore.
All right. Well, in part 2, when we get into more theory and hitting and everything, we'll get into this. I want to continue with the ABC TV, the stars of the day. Bjorn Borg, you played him in squash.
I played Borg. There was a very interesting event that occurred, and it was put on by Vitalis. I remember because they invited me into
a hair thing.
Yes, I'm surprised you even. Well, anyway,
I used to have hair.
I came into New York to do this, and they had selected the top racket athlete of several racket sports. There was a United States table tennis champion. There was Fleming Delfs, who was this 6'4" European blonde who was the champ of badminton. Borg was representing tennis. Sharif Khan of the famous Khan family, he was the North American squash champion. He was there. And I was representing racquetball. And poor Borg had the misfortune of, when we played, the format was you played everything but your own sport. But squash was pretty similar to racquetball. We were in a room and the walls and what have you. And interestingly, we played at a place in the Catskills where they didn't have a regular squash court. They had a double squash court, which was this gigantic cavern and this ball that was like a lethal bullet. It was this the hard, big squash ball.
Right.
So when Borg drew me in squash, I went up to him. He was like the teen angel. You know, just won Wimbledon. He was a kid. I mean, he might have been 20. And I said, Borg, they paid you $25,000 appearance fee. If I'm going to get any money from this, I've got to win it. So do not step in front of me at any time, because look at this ball. So we went and played, and I beat him in squash.
You probably used a few more adjectives than you're using.
Well, listen to this. I played him in squash, beat him, and then we played table tennis. And his dad was a table tennis pro. And all these tennis pros can play the hell out of table tennis. And we're playing one game where we switch sides in the middle of the game, and he's beating me 10-0 at the split. So I walk up to him as we're splitting, and I said, hey, Borg, you know you're playing badminton with me next, and we've already warmed up, and you know you're going to get your lunch and look really bad on national TV. You better give me some points. So what happened was he goes, okay, Charlie, he in his Swedish accent. So he gives me some customer rallies and what have you, and I get up to 10 points. And then the very next event is badminton, and he's playing me first off. And I served him a low serve in the front of the box, and he popped it up, and I hit him right in the face with the bird. And I go, I lied. I gave him the donut. It was great. He was a nice kid. It's hard to explain how fast he was. He doesn't, you watch him play tennis, and it doesn't look like he's running that fast, but he was fast, faster than Davey Bledsoe. He was
long strides.
He was just smooth, and it was really impressive. He invited me to a get-together when he came in for the team tennis. He was playing Ilya and Nastasi, so we were friends for that period of time. Nice young man.
You met Nastasi?
I had never met Nastasi. He was, but Borg, unfortunately, I was inebriated, and Borg had 200 fans waiting to talk to him, and instead he got stuck talking to me, where I was explaining to him how he had to go to the net or he'd never make it at Wimbledon.
All right. Okay, so the next racquetball is booming, and we have a war that starts. Leach versus Echelon.
Are you talking about the political war or the sales war?
I'm out in the hinterlands, and I'll talk as just an average player looking at it from afar. I know there was a lot of bad blood between Leach players and Echelon players. I know that the name Charlie Drake to this day elicits responses from people. I never met the man, don't know the man. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
It's like any other pot of gold that surfaces. There's always a scramble for your respective portions. And this was viewed at that moment as this burgeoning sport that was going to make everybody multi-millions of dollars. And some of the people were making it already. And so what happened is the powers that be were trying to stake out their territory. It wasn't so much a war between Echelon or Leach. It was a war between the let's call it the Kindler faction. Bob Kindler was the head of handball, and he had taken over racquetball
Now, it was
early.
USHA was the Handball Association.
Correct.
And the old USRA, right? Correct?
No,
Or
the original entity was called the IRA.
Oh, okay.
So Kindler became the IRA, and he
Right.
had various people working with him.
International Racquetball Association.
Correct. And the active on-site people were Joe Ardito, Mort Levy, and Chuck Levy were the people that were retained by Kindler to run amateur ball. And amateur ball had contracts with ball companies and racket companies and the like, where they were getting revenue, and there were some questions raised about whether that money was being divvied up in the proper way. And those questions resulted in the war.
In the war. Okay, so were there bounties placed on players, taking out a player or something like that? If you got it, I don't mean hurting them, but I mean, if you beat a player early and you were a leech player, did you get extra money or something like that? Or
The only bounty of which I am personally aware occurred when Davy Bledsoe beat Marty Hogan in the '77 Nationals. He was playing for Leach Industries, and he bolted from Leach to Wilson, who was trying to have a presence in the racquetball community, and at the same time had acquired rights to Shannon Wright, who was an extraordinarily prominent lady pro. And Charlie Drake, who was the Iron Man in negotiating and manipulating the forces behind the scenes, both for good and bad, throughout the early phase of racquetball. He was very upset by what he thought was a disloyalty by Bledsoe. And to Drake was like, I don't want to say a mafia figure, but he very much valued the loyalty of the people that he had helped bring into where they were going to college on,
right.
And they were getting this and that and houses, and and he wanted loyalty. So when he acquired various people, ending up with Marty Hogan too as the crown jewel,
right.
He used those players as bargaining chips for where he wanted to go. And I think that's done in every sport, but
right.
I don't want to lay this off as some
right.
grievous mortal sin, but that's what was
right.
happening. And what happened when Bledsoe bolted is Drake put out a bounty. So it was like free money for me, because if I just I was going to rip Bledsoe anyway, but now I got money.